Hello and welcome to the Great Unboxing, Part 1. Hello, I'm Nicole.
And I'm Ripley.
And today we are going to be talking about the history of medicine. So we are starting our new medical exhibit on the history of medicine in the Sioux. So this is just a little sneak peek of some of the stuff that you might see. So we're going to start with the surgical tools. So these are all the tools that they would have used for amputations back in the day. So one of our most gruesome looking tools is the capital saw or bone saw. So this is a saw that was used probably about the 1700s, even earlier. Tools were later adapting so that the saws would become like this. We also have our metacarpal saw. So this saw would be used for removing small limbs such as fingers. Now, when they were removing limbs, the first thing that they would want to do is not give the patient any anesthetics, anything to dull the pain. No, the patients were wide awake during this procedure during the early 1800s and before. So, you grab your tourniquet, cut off the circulation, or as much circulation as you could. So here we have the olden day tourniquet. And here we have a little bit of a newer tourniquet with a screw so that it tightens a little bit easier. After the tourniquet was applied, we would then take our capital knife here and cut away the flesh, removing the flesh down to the bone. So here's one version of the capital knife. And here's a little bit modern version. Basically just like your big kitchen knife that you have today. Then after that, you would take your bone saw and you would start sawing through the bone. And because the patient was awake, you wanted this to be done as fast as possible. They said a good surgeon is a quick surgeon back then. So sometimes surgeons became so efficient they could remove a limb in under 5 minutes. During war times, to be even faster, what they would do is we would found bones at Fort Erie that shows they sawed about 2/3 of the way through the bone and then just snapped it and then would throw the limb away so that they could get through as many patients as possible. After you had the limb tied off, you would then take your tenaculum here. Here's the olden day tenaculum, and here's a little bit more modern tenaculum. Basically the same. Curved, sharp needle, very, very sharp and pokey. What this would do is you would use it to grab the veins and arteries so that you can suture them closed so that the bleeding would be able to stop. Because back then you didn't want to cauterize the wound, because if you cauterize the wound, you're just sealing in the infection. So they wanted to leave the wound open so that it could breathe and heal. So you would always have your trusty bandage. Another thing that they would do is they would take this trusty tool here. Now, this is probably a tool that most people can't quite guess what it is. And it came with a couple different attachments. So, when the patients were convalescing in the homes, they would want to help to, let's say, clean them out. So they might give them a purgative, something to drink, so that they can clean out their stomach, and they would vomit it back up. But that just gets to your stomach. So they would have to do something else to clean out the lower half. And that's where the clister comes in. The clister, you could basically say it's our modern day enema. So you could say, bend over, son, this won't hurt me a bit. So what they would do is they would fill this tube with all sorts of different medicines. I even found a medicine that included turpentine. Could you imagine turpentine helping clean you up? Probably not too comfortable. And now a lot of reenactors who portray British surgeons during wartime always like to joke and say this is the attachment for the enlisted men and this is the attachment for the officers. A little inside joke there. Now, also after surgery, say if you had an amputation done, or you were even shot with a musket ball here. So this is a 1 ounce lead shot. It's pretty heavy here. You can feel it's pretty heavy. So since it's lead, it's not the strongest of metals. So if it went inside and it hit you, it wasn't traveling at a very high velocity because the muskets back then weren't as powerful as our guns are today. So that bullet would come and it would hit you and it wouldn't be very far. It would usually probably stay stuck either in your chest cavity or in your limbs. So if it hit one of your limbs, it would just rip through all the bone and the muscle, causing a lot of damage. So there was nothing for us to do but amputate. Even in today's medicine, they would probably have to resort to amputation because there just wasn't enough to repair. But if it went inside your chest, first they would use their fingers to dig in and try to get it out. If they couldn't use their fingers, they would use the bullet probe. So they would go in there probing in the wound to try and find it. After they found it, they could pull it out. And using the forceps that we have here, they would go in, pull the musket ball out, and then patch you up and send you on your way. After sticking your dirty fingers on the wound, being shot with this dirty musket ball, your wound was most likely going to get infected. The rule back then was all wounds become infected. That's just the way it was. But the thing was to determine what type of infection. Was it going to have white or clear pus, maybe a little bit of a yellow tinge? That was called the good pus or the laudable pus. So the infection wasn't too terrible. Now, if you had green pus or even worse, black pus, well, we knew you weren't long for this world. And also with the lead balls, as I was saying before, they weren't the strongest of metals, so sometimes pieces of the lead would actually stay stuck in your body, and then you could also get lead poisoning if you didn't already die from the infection. So after a few days, your wound would become infected. To clear out the infection, what they would do is they would use this trocar. So it is a device that they would use. They would insert it into the wound, pull out the spike, basically a big needle, and then it would drain the pus out to clean out the wound. Some other procedures that they had back then were to help migraines. So migraines were very common back then. Also, if you received a head wound and they had to go in and repair, your skull was dented and fractured in, they would want to pop that out just so it's not pressing into your brain because that's not very good. What they would do is they would take their scalpel here, and so as I was saying with the amputations, you don't get anything to dull the pain, you don't get anything to make you go to sleep. So you're gonna have your friends there holding your head as tight as they can, holding it very still. Your other friends are holding you down so that you don't move. The surgeon would go in, cut an incision in your scalp. Then I would get my assistant here to take our handy dandy retractors, hold open the flesh, And then I would take the trephine here and use a procedure called trepanation. And that's where I would drill a hole into your skull and take out a piece of your skull, and that would relieve the pressure in your head that was causing the migraines, or they could reach in and pop the bone back into place. Now, if you're a little bit of a wealthier patient, they could use a silver shilling that we have here and place it over the wound. So it is a perfect fit for our trephine here. So they would be able to place that in, and then the bone would be able to regrow around the silver and keep it in place so that you're not walking around with a hole in your skull. But at that time, if you had a trepanation procedure, it could be quite possible that you were walking around with a hole in your skull. So silver was used because it has natural antiseptic properties. It doesn't hold any germs or bacteria, though they didn't really know anything about germs or bacteria until about the 1860s when Lister was coming in and bringing in germ theory and all safe practices. So before that, they just knew that if you use silver, it caused less infections than other metals. So the trepanation procedure has been around for centuries, even millennia. We have, archaeologists have found that their skulls have the squares cut in them when they would do the original trepanation procedures, sometimes just using a knife or even something like a chisel to take out a piece of the skull to relieve the pressure. And these are sometimes about 3,000 years old, if not older. Hippocrates, known as the father of medicine, even used this procedure. So this has been around for a long time, and it's still used today when surgeons go in and are doing any procedures on your head and are using the burr hole driller to drill a hole into your skull. So what we would also do is we would always have needles and thread to sew up any wounds that we would have here. So common things, we still use our little suture kit that we would have here. And so these are all our surgical tools that you would use throughout the ages. These tools that we have here are from about the 1750s all the way up till probably about the late 1800s. So these tools, if you had to have any surgery back then, these are what the surgeons would have used on you. Now another thing that a good surgeon or doctor always had was their trusty journals. So they would go in and they would write all their different medicines down, all the different procedures. So they would always have this with them. Or as time progressed and we were able to more commonly and affordably print books, you would have books like these. This is a pocket encyclopedia on medicine and surgery, full of all these things so doctors can go in and look at all the different symptoms and treatments to be able to treat you. And then we have this treatise here, also just on surgery, to help the doctors learn all the new surgical practices that were going on so that they can implement them themselves. So we would like to thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you will come back for our next unboxing. I promise you it won't be quite as gory as this one. Sorry if it scared anyone. And we hope that you will come and visit our medical exhibit when it is up and running, and also when we are finally once again able to open. Thank you. Come again.